There were just all these little moments in rehab that were such big learn. In 28 days, I learned so much. Don't talk shit, don't gossip, don't steal anymore, have a gratitude practice, be grateful for hot water. It was a really valuable lesson. I learned so much in that short time. I was just so determined and so grateful that my experience in rehab was so freeing and happy that I knew when I got out, I was like, I never have to drink again. And I haven't 11 years later. But I do a lot of stuff to have gotten there.
Green lights and blue skies are on their way. Yeah, they're on their way.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining Crosstalk, the South Florida edition. We are the #1 recovery podcast in the world and universe. I don't know who rated us, but I told you so. Subscribe, like, please comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. We want to hear it. We can take criticism well too. So today I have an amazing woman who's been pivotal in my recovery. I met her 7 years ago, last November. And I was told to call you and that you would be someone that could support me, and you did the whole time. So thank you so much. You picked me up every morning and we do things together, and I'm so grateful to you. So I'm excited for you to share your story.
Oh, thank you, Irini. Thanks for having me. And I remember those days when you would call me and I was always going through something, and I would be like, thank you for calling me, because it was just kind of a bit uncanny when you would call. So my name is Nancy. I am an alcoholic, and a little bit about me. I grew up in Connecticut, Stamford, Connecticut, in the 70s. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a time when it was a bit crazy, parents, there was no helicopter parenting back in those days. Your parents didn't really know where you were. You'd be gone for days with the station wagon, and there was no cell phones, and it was kind of a really fun, free time. But, everybody, kind of just did whatever they wanted to do back in those days. There was no hovering. There was no checking in. I guess everyone kind of smoked weed on the bus in those days, and in school, and it was a crazy, crazy time to grow up. Nowadays, I just don't think it's like that. I know there are drugs around in schools, but man, it was the Wild West back in those days.
Wow.
And there was a few ominous warnings about my future spiral into addiction. For example, like getting kicked off all the sports teams for smoking weed. That was a couple, that was a little bit of I was a really good athlete. Crashing my parents' station wagon, totally drunk. It was weird because my brothers, our house was actually raided by the police when I was really young. I was like 12 and I had started smoking weed. And when the cops were searching my room, I got really upset because my brothers were like, go around and see where the police are, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, thought I was all cool, checking out where the cops were. Like, they're in your room now. They found the weed, blah, blah, blah. But then when they were in my room, I got really hysterical and thought I was going to go to jail because I had a roach in my toy safe. It's so funny. And a cop actually asked me to open the piggy bank toy safe. I'm like, really? You can't figure out how to open this toy safe? Whatever. It was so ridiculous. But anyway, so moving on, I went off to college. And after that happened, I did swear I was never going to get involved in any kind of drugs or anything like that after what I saw happen to my brothers. And of course, that was not the case. I went to school in New Haven, Connecticut. I went to college. And again, it was the 80s. And it was a wild time to be in. We got hit with a big snowstorm, and I'm not talking about the cold kind. There was a lot of cocaine started flooding our country, as you guys know, in the 80s. And it was it was everywhere. And didn't really get that involved in cocaine in college, but there was a lot of other drugs going around in college. I mean, this is a recovery podcast, so I'm going to kind of talk about how that kind of, I mean, it hadn't gotten a real hold of me yet. You know, there was a lot of speed back then, a lot of quaaludes. Everyone was doing mushrooms. You know, we would go to concerts completely wrecked at the New Haven Coliseum. And it was a wild, wild time. We'd go down to the city. Oh my God, the limelight. It was just a wild time. The 80s in New York. I mean, you guys know, you know, it was just, I don't know if which was worse, the 70s or the 80s, but I did end up graduating college, barely. And I got involved. So I did find a job right out of college. And, but I had moved in with my friend, my best friend in Greenwich, and we got involved with this drug dealer. And he would come over to our house all the time. And it got bad. It got really bad. And that was like, 1986, 87. And the cocaine was just everywhere. I got to know some Colombians, and they would just give you whatever you needed. And we would try and sell it, but not very successfully. And
was it because you were doing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, doing a lot of it. And it got pretty dark then, you know. I mean, and that was, I didn't get sober till 2012. So you can imagine the many years that follow that of just kind of dabbling. But I hadn't really...
Did you have any consequences back then?
Not really. I mean, I feel like some kind of divine energy was watching out for me, because there were times where when we lived in Greenwich, it was right near the Westchester Airport, we would literally, this guy would come over at like 3 a.m. We would peer out our window all paranoid. You know when you're all paranoid and you like think something's what? There was actually an undercover cop actually surveilling our house. So when you would look out the window, you think you're imagining things, but there was actually a cop watching us. So I was like, this isn't good. But the fact that we didn't get raided is so amazing. And our poor landlady, she was downstairs and she was just like, these kids, oh my God. We just had people coming and going all hours of the night. But I haven't talked about that time in a long time, but I was showing up to work super tired, obviously staying up all night. There were times where I'd be asleep in the conference room on the conference table at this job. It was an accounting firm, and I was like, this is not good. So not really, knock on wood. I mean, we got pulled over so many times, you know, going down to the hood in Stamford, driving, the police would pull us over. I mean, there were so many instances, more than I could count, where we would get stopped by the police and we somehow got away with it. Probably, I don't know, you know, white girls, whatever. I mean, sad to say, white privilege. But anyway, so I ended up moving out of that apartment, and I moved down to, I got another job in a marketing company, and I moved to this part of Stamford called Chapin, and I was working for this marketing company because I had a degree in marketing, and I got involved in local politics. And still kind of, I was doing okay at that point. I kind of had gotten it together a little bit, you know, not really completely out of control. And I got involved in politics, and I was at a fundraiser, and that's where I met my husband. And we started seeing each other, and this poor guy, I mean, I was going to work every day and everything, and things were okay. But there was one time where I think I was supposed to meet his mom and dad, and he came over to pick me up, and I was not right. I mean, I was completely kind of drunk, high, and, you know, we almost broke up. But a long story short, I did end up staying with this man. He's still my husband. I don't know how, God bless him. And we started a family. It was really nice. We moved up to a little town in Stamford, in Connecticut, called Shelton, and we bought a little house. We ended up having 3 children. I started to, when I was drinking and smoking weed, but being still a really good mom, pretty high functioning mom at that point. But once in a while, I would still get cocaine, and there were consequences from that, because Kurt would know. He could tell, you know, right. And it wasn't like I could really hide it anymore. It was weird. I would go into a bit of something happened to my brain where I I couldn't really function anymore when I was on it. Like I used to be able to kind of hide it, but he would know right away. And it started to become a bit of an issue again. It was funny how it flared up later on, you know, in the 80s, fine, no kids, single, partying, all good. That's kind of fun. I had a lot of good times, you know, in my 20s. But then when you're a mom and you have 3 little kids to take care of, and you're still trying to and you're starting to still do drugs by yourself, you're not at a club, and you kind of have to look at that, and maybe you have a little bit of a problem, but it hadn't become the rapacious creditor yet.
So were you hiding it from him?
Well, it was more like binge using. You know, he would go out of town, but there were times where I would use it and he would be able to tell. So, you know, it hadn't taken a real hold yet, but there were times where he's like, I could tell, like, you're not drunk or stoned on weed, you're on something else. So, anyway, yeah, that was, you know, I was still pretty present. And then what happened was we moved out of that house and into another house, and things went on, and I was, you know, a stay-at-home mom. It was great. I actually went back to school. I got my master's, and I was doing pretty well. But it's funny, in the back of my mind, I still was, you know, still smoking weed and drinking, but really high functioning, good mom. Went back to school, and then it's funny. I had 3 C-sections. This is where opiates get introduced into the picture. I had 3 C-sections. It was weird. I had the pills in the cabinet, could take them or leave them alone. Wasn't really addicted at that point. And then I'll never forget, at one of my softball games, because I was on a softball team, an older woman handed me a Percocet. And that was it. I became something in my brain. I had snapped, and I became addicted to pills. And that's when my journey in real spiral into addiction kind of started. And I became completely addicted to opiates. And I almost substituted the cocaine addiction for this opiate addiction. And it became a struggle. I mean, getting them, having enough of them, it's just so sad what you will do to, when you run out, you don't feel well, you feel sick, you feel tired. And yeah, that went on for years. And then, you know, finally it became pretty apparent. Then kind of, you know, the progression, like to talk about the progression of the disease, because, you know, over a slow period of time, I slowly descended into Hades, you know, hell. And it took many, many years. And I'm grateful for all of that, because maybe I wouldn't be sober if I didn't go into hell. Because when you escape from hell, you're like, oh my God, I made it out alive. This is amazing. I had to do everything I did to get where I am today. But now I'm like 45 years old. My kids are teenagers, and now I'm doing cocaine. I've got the pills. I'm drinking a ton.
Can your kids tell?
They knew, you know, they were pretty smart. I was talking to one of them today, and she's like, I could kind of tell when I was pretty young. She was like, there were times where you were really messed up, but she's like, I understand it. It's a progressive disease, because I explained that to her. But then it became like every day, you know, I'd be at the dinner table, and I never knew that was called nodding out, but I'd be like half asleep, and the kids would be like, Mom, Mom, Mom. And finally, you know, my husband said to me, now this is like 2011, 2012. I mean, I'm so thin. The things I'm doing are just so unconscionable, and stuff I would never do sober, obviously, like making my son miss his train because I'm too messed up to get him to the Amtrak. You know, showing up at places where I shouldn't be under the influence, you know, really just those spiritual loss of values to this day haunt me. But I was sick, very sick. And finally, what also haunts me is when I was faced with the choice to go to rehab or never see my family again, there was a hesitation, like a pause. And that haunts me because, wow, you know.
How did you get to that situation? Having to make the choice?
Well, finally my husband was like, we could tell you're totally messed up. Like, you either get help or we're done. Like, and just the pause, that moment of where I was like, because I had a lot of fear.
That's normal. I mean, when you're addicted to something, you know, it's your thing. Like, don't take that away from me. I will
Right.
fight you tooth and nail.
Right.
We'll hide it. We'll, you know, do so many things. So I know it may haunt you, but it's also, I mean, I know you've also must have forgiven yourself, and you know that was the influence, not really you.
Of course. Well, it's the devil, literally
Right.
the devil.
Right.
But when I think about that, you know, I've shared that before in meetings, etc. That you know, the way the disease has you almost ready to throw away everything you hold most dear, your family, your parents, your grandma, everything for that. That's really spooky. And I share that a lot because it's just so cunning, baffling, and powerful. And finally, I did make the decision to go get help. Thank God. And yeah, it was the best decision I ever made. And I went to a 28-day treatment center in Texas.
I love your stories from this treatment center. And we're so similar, so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't sure I could live without alcohol. I was really nervous. I was so addicted to it and the pills, and it was such a progression. I love that part of my story because it's so interesting, and that's all over our program, the progression of the disease, and that's what happened. But it took me, some people just are real quick, they get sober young, and that's just not my story. And I did go to a 28-day rehab, and they gave me a taper, and I slept for 3 days. And when I woke up, I felt pretty good. And my brain started to wake up, and I didn't feel too bad. I felt free for the first time in so many years. And I'll never forget thinking to myself, like, I can do this. Yeah. I can do this. I'm laughing. I'm having fun.
Can I ask what a taper is?
Oh, yeah. They gave me Suboxone for 3 days.
I don't even know what
That's like if you're coming off opiates, it's so you don't get really sick.
It's an opiate in itself, but it's made to, just as addictive, just as everything, but if it's monitored and used to actually taper off, meaning they give you an amount, then they give you less, then they give you less, till you're finally off it. Because opiates are really hard. They get people who are not even addicts, you know? And it's one of the hardest things, as we've now seen with these movies and shows on Hulu and HBO and all those channels about this family that put it out there and knew that it was so horribly addictive that it got the doctors, it got everyone. So this is a drug that the same company that put out the original medication put out.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure. I'm
Yeah.
not positive, but.
So you took so they tapered you, and then you slowly started to kind of, you said, breathe.
I came back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, after 3 days.
That's pretty good because they keep other people on it for a long time.
Terrible. You just get addicted to that. I didn't want to stay on it.
So you felt better physically and mentally, or was it first?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I mean, I felt pretty good.
What was going through your mind?
That I felt free.
Like spiritually?
Well, I mean, yeah, I just felt good. I felt free for the first time. I felt joy. I mean, also, don't forget, coming off opiates suppress the natural production of serotonin and dopamine. So a lot of opiate addicts feel a little depressed their first 6 months. And I did go through a little post-acute withdrawal. It's called PAWS. Every 3, they explained, it was such a great rehab. They explained everything, how your brain has to reconnect in the back because the two little things get separated. They had like a neuroscientist come in and explain that, give yourself a chance to heal. So I started doing a little jogging at the rehab. I started eating better. It's very, very thin, like you. And I just have the fondest memories of this rehab. You know, it was really ordinary. There were kids right off the street. There were nurses. Somebody brought a guitar. I was always caught smoking in the men's smoking area because the women were kind of dramatic. So I just like to hang out with the guys because we'd like throw chestnuts at each other and flick cigarette butts at each other. And we just and everyone had each other's back. We would like scrounge for cigarette butts in the can. And It was an amazing experience. And I have heard too that, I mean, I've only been to one rehab, knock on wood, so has Irini, but people who go back out after a period of sobriety get worse really quickly.
It's progressive. You pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and I heard that people get sick much faster, and I haven't, knock on wood, had to experience that. But I felt free for the first time at this rehab. I had so much fun. I was a handful too, let me tell you. They were always catching me. I toilet papered the whole men's smoking area because it was mischief night. I don't know if you know what that is, but in Connecticut, the night before Halloween, we have mischief night.
We call it cabbage night.
Yeah, and I confessed to the crime, and I had to take all the toilet paper down. I was just in such joy.
Toilet paper did you?
I don't know, I was just throwing them everywhere. I even did it to the therapist's office.
Wait, but the story that I love the most is your Sharpie story.
Oh, well, that was kind of a pivotal moment for me, as one of my friends says a lot. We always make fun of him for saying pivotal moment, but I used to shoplift a lot because I could just get away with it, and I didn't have any regard for anybody else's stuff, and I was so selfish and self-centered and could have cared less.
Which, just to be clear, is its own addiction. Shoplifting is a process addiction that many people pick up after they put drugs down. So this is why I love this
because
so much.
it dings a receptor. You get a little, it's kind of like gambling or scratch off tickets or shopping or sex. You get
Eating
a little
disorder.
Yeah, and I had this really nice lady who was always cashing in my quarters for my laundry, this really sweet Latino lady, because there was a lot of Latinos there. It was Texas. And I was cashing in my quarters all the time, and I asked her to borrow a Sharpie, and I just kept it. So I was like, I like the Sharpie, and I need it. I want it. And there was something in my brain that clicked, like, you're sober now and you're still going to steal from people. It's just not okay. So it was kind of like a turning point. There were a few turning points for me in rehab where my brain, my brain started to be like, wait, you can't keep doing the same thing sober that you were doing using, because then it's just, you're not following any. I just was really superstitious too. And another turning point for me was when I was, I had just done my laundry and I was outside. I had been playing basketball. And I came into my humble little room. It was like kind of a dorm setup. And I had just washed my towels and I took a hot shower, and I was so grateful for the water coming out of the thing and my clean towel. And I had like all my little, toiletries that I brought my own towels to rehab though, because, I'm bougie like that, right? So, but there was just a couple moments. And one thing that really helped me was at the rehab, at night they had us write gratefuls, which is a little slip. I was like, what's that? What's gratefuls? Because, I was such a brat. I always thought I was such a good person, but I was so selfish and self-centered, And it would be like you would write what you were grateful for on this little slip of paper, and then we would go around the room and read everyone would read what they wrote. And it instilled in me from early days of recovery a gratitude practice, which I still have today.
One of the most important things that we can have.
And you don't even have to be in recovery to have a gratitude practice. And people who have a gratitude practice are actually much more stable and happy in general. And another thing that happened to me in rehab, which is really uncanny and weird, is I had someone had to pack my suitcase because my best friend Olga, because I was too messed up to pack it. And I, of course, packed some photos of my children and everything. And in those photos was a prayer to the Great Spirit. It's a Native American prayer that was written in the 1800s. And I was like, and I packed this really neat Native American ring that I wore the whole rehab. And, I thought I was going to like bury it in this cool desert of Texas, and I was going to be all spiritual. And I'm really grateful for that because, part of being sober is you have to start praying. And I stumbled across this prayer in my stuff. And that's just such a God shot, because I had this really beautiful prayer that I still say 11 years later every morning in my stuff. So at the rehab, I started reading this Native American prayer every morning and unrolling my little cigarettes, and I would go, and I would blow the tobacco to the spirits, because I was like that, And because I couldn't sleep. I was up at 4:30 in the morning walking around, and I don't know, I just I kept it really simple in rehab, and I made a ton of friends, and we all just, another thing, I was like gossiping and talking shit in rehab, and I got caught. That was another turning point. Like, you're going to talk shit and gossip can't do that anymore. There was just all these little moments in rehab that were such big learning. In 28 days, I learned so much. Don't talk shit. Don't gossip. Don't steal anymore. Have a gratitude practice. Be grateful for hot water. There are people all over the world that don't even have hot water or a freaking toilet or a place to sleep.
You're looking back a lot and like reflecting on a lot of the stuff you were doing. Did you feel like you were conscious at all about what you were doing? You just kind of...
Yeah, I was, because I was awake. I was in an awakened state of mind for the first time in a really, really long time. And I
Do you mean conscious before?
Conscious, so like the grateful thing and like gossiping, like you knew that you shouldn't be doing that, but for some reason you would still do it. Were you conscious about what you were doing?
Well, it was funny when I did it. It came back to me. Like people were like, "Why did you say that about?" I was like, "Oh, that girl relapsed." I was just talking shit about some girl that was there, and it turned out she hadn't relapsed. And I had started because somebody else told me, and then I told somebody else, and it was a really valuable lesson. I learned so much in that short time. Like, don't start causing chaos and stirring the pot. Don't steal. Be kind. Help others. And that's what I started doing. Like my friend Justin, who got dropped off with a pack of cigarettes, I would buy cartons for him, and then he had no money, and then he would sell them, and I just let him keep the money because he had no money. And that kid is still sober, knock on wood, today, because I see him on Facebook.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he would always call himself a junkie, and I'd be like, Justin, he was like 23. I'm like, where are we going today? And he's like, come on, we got group at 11. And I was like, okay. I was like not really well, at the time, but he looked out for me, took care of me. And I got out of there, and what I did was got home. I'll never forget, it was Thanksgiving, and I got home just in time to go to Thanksgiving at my parents', and they all had like an alcohol-free Thanksgiving. But meanwhile, I would like peer outside, and everybody was in the driveway smoking weed and drinking Bud Light. And I was like, guys, I don't care. Like it didn't bother me. It was weird. The obsession had been removed immediately. I had no desire to drink or use. I was really, really lucky with that. A lot of people come out and they have a lot of cravings and they want to use, or they're thinking about it. I was like, no way. I was just so determined and so grateful that my experience in rehab was so freeing and happy that I knew when I got out, I was like, I never have to drink again, and I haven't 11 years later. But I do a lot of stuff to have gotten there.
So that's what I want to know. So
Okay.
I want you to talk about early sobriety for you also, and what you started doing and how that has evolved into what you do today. Because I know that, I see you doing kind of the same stuff from when I met you. Mm-hmm. You were, I think, 4 years sober when I met you.
Okay.
And yeah, because I'm 7, you're 11. And you still, pick girls up, do service for others, you help so many women. I mean, your name resonates everywhere. So tell me like how it started and how it's evolved.
Okay, well, when I got out of rehab, I was still living in Connecticut at the time, and my youngest daughter was in France at school for high school, and I started going to meetings right away down the hill from my house in Connecticut, and that's another God shot. Like, how convenient was that? I had to just trundle down this hill to go to this little meeting in a church. How convenient. I had to
trundle.
Trundle. I didn't have to freaking schlep 25 minutes, literally down the hill, and it was a very small meeting, but I started going there right away. And I wasn't people tell me, they're like, you were like all skinny and shaky and scared. And I was like, I was told to start, as soon as you got home, to start going to meetings. And that's what I did. And I went every day. I went every morning. And even when it was like 10 degrees outside, I would go outside with my little scarf and hat, and I would look up at the stars on my deck in Connecticut and say my little great spirit prayer, and like still blow the tobacco to the spirits. And I got another prayer in rehab out of this witch book that I still, and then my friend Matt, who was like half Comanche, wrote me a prayer, and I still say those same 3 prayers every day.
I know them.
Yep, every day I still say those same 3 prayers. But I ended up, this is kind of another uncanny, total example of God and synchronicity and the great spirit of the universe, because I ended up renting a house in Highland Beach because Susie was down here with Debbie, my sister-in-law, who lived in Boynton Beach. And I was like, Debbie, where do I go? And she's like, there's some great meetings down at Crossroads Club.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's that? And I tootled on over to Crossroads Club from Highland Beach.
Your vocabulary is killing me.
And in my little car, and I didn't know it was Soul, and it was a 7 a.m. meeting. And I started going to that meeting
it's magical.
In January, I guess. We were renting this house in Highland Beach. Cammie was away. There was nobody in my house in Connecticut. I think Connor might have been living there at the time, but he was, out of college, and he had the whole house in Connecticut to himself. He didn't mind. It was just like a fresh start. It was good, just to get, we rented this house in Highland Beach, and I started going to the 7 a.m. And then I moved back to Connecticut. Cammie did her senior year in New Haven at her school in Connecticut. So I spent kind of my first year and a half of recovery at the house in Connecticut, and totally stayed sober in the house with and I was kind of proud of myself, because a lot of people go back home and they kind of just don't do it. I started going to my meetings up there, and then she ended up going off to UC Berkeley, and we just moved to Florida. We sold our house in Connecticut, and then...
Did you feel like living there and going to the meetings, the location helped you?
Being in Connecticut?
Yeah, living in Connecticut.
Yeah, well, I was really grateful to be sober in that house. I loved that house, and of course I had to go to my meetings, and I found a sponsor up there.
Well, you were given a plan, right? A plan of action to take, and you followed it, right?
Well, they say, drop your bags when you get out of rehab and go to a meeting. Like, a lot of people don't have a plan when they get out. They're like, what do I do? Where do I go? It's like, if you're told to go to a meeting and find a sponsor, if you want to stay sober, that's what you're going to do. And that's what I did. I mean, I followed directions, good orderly direction, God, G-O-D. Mm-hmm. And then anyway, I did end up moving to Florida full time, and that's where my service, there's not a ton of service opportunities in Connecticut, but just stumbling across Florida. And then when I bought my house in Delray Beach, I was like, it was just crazy. I didn't know that this is recovery happy. I had no idea that it was so much recovery down here. I just happened to move down here and started going to Crossroads Club. And that's when I met she was kind of a character. She was from Karen Renaissance. That girl who's from LA, she was like in the movie business. She was a trip. She's like, can you start picking us up? I was like, sure. And I would zip over to Renaissance, and I started picking girls up there. That was like 2013.
Pick up girls, and you're not even I always say a graduate of.
I know, I'm an honorary Karen grad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's an incredible place. I mean, the fact that they allow you to go out in the community and make these supports. If I hadn't had the chance to meet you,
right,
I don't know if I would be here today. It's all synchronous.
Totally, exactly. I mean, I'll never forget meeting you. Oh my God, that was fun. I remember that. I remember that day so to say. I even remember the car I had. I even remember what I was wearing when I met you. You're like, can you be my son? Oh, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but
that's okay.
Anyway, so that's when, my service really picked up, like giving people rides. And, I found a sponsor down here at the Wayside Treatment Center.
Yeah.
Hannah, she's still my sponsor today. She lives in Utah. And we did the steps, and I started sponsoring other girls. And that has really been just so impactful, because I always tell women when I'm meeting with them how much they're helping me.
Yeah.
I
also feel that when I'm helping others, whether it's through sponsorship or, just being a support, like a friend.
Of course.
Seeing the transformation in people from when they first, either get out of detox or rehab or, and then seeing as getting a little better and getting a little better, and then struggling and then picking it back up. And we still struggle even years later, but watching people like pick it up and just do the right thing, and your life just changes. Everything, all these blessings come into your life. And it's just so beautiful to me, seeing the transformation of people and seeing how, whether it is a 12-step program or rehab, whatever you do, that makes you get there. As long as you're there and you're not picking up a drink or a drug, that's really the goal, right?
Well, it's funny you use that word transformation because it's all over our literature, but also people literally transform before your very eyes because they come in a bit sickly looking, pale,
Yeah.
not well.
But also in their actions.
Right. And you see them physically transform too. That's kind of cool. They
Yeah.
start to have this inner glow and you're like, that's, I mean, I've seen, so to me, that's a spiritual experience, seeing people transform. And it's all about the action, behavior, all of that, you know, common sense becomes uncommon sense, all these little things we learn.
Yeah.
But
You always would tell me that it's about the psychic change.
right.
And that's when I was in treatment and I was sitting on my little balcony smoking my little cigarettes and I said, oh my God, I have to change. But it was almost the best epiphany because I did have to change. And I almost needed a brainwashing. So they say, oh, I don't want to be brainwashed, but I needed that.
Me
And I'm
too.
so happy I got that because, you know, I had some bad thinking just about myself, everything. I didn't find myself worthy of value, all of those things, plus treating others in a nasty way and being bitchy, to be honest, and aggressive. And then changing that and becoming, listen, I'm not perfect, but much kinder, much sweeter most of the time.
Right.
You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's funny because you have to change. I mean, and follow spiritual principles because if you don't, then you're just kind of a dry drunk in a way, a prey to misery and depression, can't control our emotional natures, all of those things. So,
Yeah. Do you remember when I was losing my temper at 3 years sober and I like couldn't control it? Do you remember that?
yeah, I do. I also remember coming to see you when you worked at that place on over the bridge and you were like, not okay. And you were like, I'm going back to New Jersey. And you were, I think I brought you some cigarettes or something.
Yeah.
And you were like crying. It's
I
like
think
that
you gave me
little
some money too.
That little recovery job. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were so down and out. And I was like, stay the
I
course.
was like,
You're
can
going
I
to be fine.
book your massage or facial?
Yeah,
That was my job.
Yeah, I remember that. But
I was barely making any money. I couldn't even shop at the supermarket. It was a hard beginning.
I know, and you look at you now, and I've seen so many people in that situation. And I always say, call my friend Irini. She did it. It's hard in the beginning.
It's so hard, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
I picked up a medallion up in Karen, PA this weekend, and it was magical. It was a magical experience. And one of the things I said to people, like, they say life beyond your wildest dreams. First of all, I would never have dreamt of this life. It wouldn't have been appealing to me before, number one.
Interesting.
Even though, you know, I have all the blessings, and it's so much better than what I pictured myself dying in a disco, pretty much, right? Because you don't really end up in the disco,
Yeah.
you end up on the aerobed.
Right, exactly.
But really, is that like the way I feel nowadays? Even though I know I might go through some dark stuff, like I recently was in a sad mood.
Me too. I can relate.
Yeah, and still my feeling is like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
You know, I'm so excited for the future because even when it's depressing or a little bad, it still gets me through to like another level, you know, another level of happiness, another level of working on myself, another level of helping others, whatever it may be. And it feels good.
I mean, I know. What would life be without a little adversity? Wouldn't it be a bit boring? If everything went so smoothly all the time, how would we even know joy if everything was so perfect all the time? I feel like
exactly.
adversity makes us so grateful for the good times. So
Absolutely. And the gratitude that you talk about, the gratefuls, I love that. Gratitude is so important. I tell, you know, people I work with and, you know, just friends and supports in this area especially, that gratitude is key.
it's one of our many tools in our little toolkit for sure. Yeah.
I remember when I was trying to learn about that toolkit and I was like, what are they talking about? Tools in a toolkit? I was like, just tell me what to do, you know? So I did. I played follow the leader. You told me to do, and then slowly everything kind of got clarified when they needed to be, like when it needed to happen.
Right. I mean, and it's also laid out very clear directions.
Yeah.
In the literature, but
If you actually do the work.
right. Yeah, true.
People don't want to. People,
right. You got to follow the rules.
Unfortunately, I wish it was as easy as I'm not going to drink, so I won't drink. But if you're a real alcoholic like me, I need more than that. I need more than just like saying I'm not going to drink. I need the toolkit. I need meetings. I need all that stuff. And that's me. And that may not, again, other people have other roads to recovery, but that's for me. And I know that's for you. And you introduced me to this world, and I find it magical.
Right. I mean, stopping drinking is but a beginning. If you don't pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet, you're going to be pretty miserable and unhappy. You're just going to become really dry. Mm-hmm. So, exactly. I mean, stopping drinking is not all we do. There's a long period of reconstruction after that.
Absolutely. Better people, better reactions. We're not flipping people off in traffic anymore.
Right. Right. So, I mean, yeah.
So is that your essential kind of recipe for success? Helping people, picking up girls still, what else would you say is really, I know you do a lot of sports too. Do you feel like that helps you with other things like that, whether it's anxiety or whatever else may come up for you?
Well, if you had to ask me what my recipe for success is as far as staying sober, it's a number of things. I'm a real creature of routine, habit. So I start my day every day the same. When my head hits the pillow, I'm always like, thank you, Great Spirit, for another day of sobriety. I always say, watch over my family, watch over, my cats. But I pray for the world at large too. When I'm out in the world, I'm a human being and treat people kindly and drive politely. And then when I wake up, I always wake up with a smile, and I start my day the same every day. I go outside and say my little prayers for everyone and the world at large. And I wish for peace on earth and goodwill to men, because everything that's going on, because sometimes I get caught in this little bubble of South Florida and I'm like, wow, there's a whole world out there, right. And then I pick people up. Right now I'm currently on a roll with a lot of immersion girls.
Yeah, I'm going there tomorrow actually with you to speak there. That's an amazing, immersion is an incredible place.
I had some immersion girls over for movie night Friday night. Yeah. So I'll pick them up.
I want to go to movie night.
I know, it was cute. They were just fresh out of, they're actually just moved into a halfway house. And then I go to we go to our meeting. That's how we start our day, 7 a.m. It's spiritual breakfast. We get our spiritual breakfast. We fellowship, we laugh, we joke around. We're out in the parking lot being crazy, talking about sports, movies, whatever. And then we go inside and listen to the message. We share the message of experience, strength, and hope. We don't share the mess. We share the message. We leave there. I bring people home. And then I meet with girls and take them through the program of recovery. Right now, I currently have 7 active sponsees.
I don't know how you do that.
And not all women, a couple gay guys sprinkled in there, and they're adorable. And then, all the people I have helped, they in turn help others. So it's this spreading out effect.
Pretty cool.
And yeah, totally. It's
really,
it's amazing. Like if you help 5 people and they help 5 people and then they help 5 people, because I look at it as, we're in the midst of this huge fentanyl epidemic, and fentanyl has actually killed more young people than the Vietnam War currently. And it's really scary. And it's actually carfentanil now is the new thing. So anyway, that's how I spend my days. And I bring spiritual principles into my home's occupations and affairs. I don't just go to a meeting and be all happy in a meeting and then go out and like flip people off while I'm driving, or be rude to the waitress, right, or impolite to the checkout girl at the Boys when I'm going for my apples or whatever. Right, I treat people kindly and with respect, and I apologize when wrong, and I try and be a good communicator. Yeah, I have humility. Like I'm able to admit, hey, I don't need to win a useless argument today. I was wrong, And even if I think I'm right, I'm like, yeah, you might be right. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. And so, it's easy to, be of service and give people rides and help all these women. But if you're not practicing spiritual principles, I keep a conscious contact with the great spirit of the universe all day. If a parking spot comes up, I'm like, oh my God, thank you.
You
great
know me
spirit.
and my parking
Right?
gods. I'm
Yeah,
really lucky
totally.
with the parking gods.
Right. So, that's what I do. That is what I do. And I have a really strong gratitude practice when I'm washing my face at night and hot water's coming out of the faucet. I'm like, phew, I'm pretty rich. I've got
Yeah.
hot water coming out of my faucet right now.
Absolutely. After I lived
Come on.
in Peru and I
Right.
saw, like, first of all, I was poisoned by the water. I know I say water in a weird way, but, and I saw people traveling for miles just to
Thank
come
you.
get a
Right.
job and selling herbs along the way. And I haven't traveled everywhere, right? But that experience makes me so grateful for, like, light,
Like
electricity,
flipping.
Wi-Fi.
How about bombs not being rained down on you right now?
Absolutely, but half the
lot
world
of
doesn't
people
have
have to deal with-
Wi-Fi.
I know.
Middle America doesn't have Wi-Fi. And sometimes
know
I
that.
wonder why,
Right, like we just live in this privileged world, and
we're
when
lucky.
people complain, I'm like, including me, I tell myself to shut up because it's actually quite disgusting, when I'm rolling my eyes because I have to go to Whole Foods. I'm like, oh, you poor thing, you have to go to Whole Foods because who wants to grocery shop, right? But you get to go in and buy anything we want. This isn't East Germany in the 80s. So anyway, just all of that is what I do, and hopefully I'll do it all tomorrow again, helping
Yeah.
others. And I'm actually meeting 3 sponsees tomorrow back to back.
I like that you said apologize when wrong, but I want to follow that up with
Okay.
if there's no action behind it, right? Like I could say I'm sorry, but then if I keep doing the same nasty thing to you the next day, how many sorries till it's like, all right, well, are you really sorry? So the
Right.
fact that we actually take action, it's an action. This whole thing is like taking action, doing things for other people, not just saying you're going to do it, not just saying you're sorry, but showing the sorry with your personality, with the way you communicate with them, and showing them like, I really want to fix this. I don't want to be that way.
Right. Well, demonstrating these principles in all our affairs.
Yeah.
I feel like talk is a bit cheap.
Well, you taught me that,
Yeah.
that talking is not enough, that we really have to actually like, what did I do right today? What did I do today that
Right.
was good and helpful?
A little nighttime inventory.
Yeah.
Do I owe anybody an apology?
Absolutely.
Did I treat everyone kindly and with respect? And then conscious contact, of course,
Yeah.
with some sort of higher power.
And I love meditation. Personally,
Yeah.
for me, that's been pivotal to my anger, pivotal to my reactiveness. I struggled a lot with that when I first got sober. I would just lash out at people. But meditating really helps. It's hard to be, we're not perfect all the time, but that's why there is an apology, and that's why there is new action to take after that,
Right.
And I think it's important for people to know that we mess up, but we make it right, and anyone can do that.
We are not saints, right?
We are not saints.
Right.
I said I'd get sober. I didn't say I'd become a saint.
Yeah, no, so true, and then of course helping someone else. That's what it's
Yeah.
all about. It doesn't have to be
That's my favorite part.
It doesn't have to be sponsoring either. It could be giving someone a ride, giving some homeless guy
This
a freaking
podcast.
granola bar. Yeah, this podcast.
Giving someone hope who is maybe sitting at home and either can't afford rehab or but can reach out, can comment to this and ask for advice, or
Right.
there are so many resources online. You can go to meetings at different clubhouses across America. If you look up 12-step meetings, you can find the right one for you. If that's your goal, if that's your path,
And then there's also people who kind of hear the fact that you're a mother, you have kids,
Yeah.
a better version of yourself. I'm sure as a mother as well.
Of course.
And your kids love you today. They come
And
and
being able to share that like with your kids,
yeah.
that's really cool. Especially for the kids.
Yeah.
Like seeing their mother change and kind of seeing them grow. You're really proud of them, and you're just grateful that you get to like see them change and be a part of that. It's beautiful. It's really cool.
I know getting sober is the greatest thing I've ever accomplished in my life, you know?
It's hard too.
Because I wouldn't be able to be there if I didn't have my sobriety. So it wouldn't matter. So, yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Everyone has a mother too. I mean, whether they're with them or not, like we all came from a mother, so it's like a very sensitive place.
It's always going to be attached to you, and if you were abandoned at birth, or that's the primal wound, or even adoption, believe it or not, even if you're fine and you grew up in a great family, that's still the primal wound, because we're so attached, literally, like we have to be cut off from each other.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. You're pretty badass, I think.
Yeah, women are badass. Nancy is definitely a beacon of hope for many women. And when I say that she's probably helped over 1 million people, I can say that with confidence. She helps 7 women at a time constantly, and more women by just speaking at places and listening to people when they reach out to you. And then those people, again, it grows exponentially. So that exponential growth is infinite.
Yeah, it's really cool. And all the women you've helped too. I mean,
because, you know, you helped me, and then I looked at all the service you do, and I said, wow, that kind of makes her happy. I'm going to try it. And it really does. That's what makes me happy the most.
Right. Because it takes us out of ourselves.
Yeah.
You're actually thinking about someone else for a change, not your own little thoughts and plans. And going out of your way to help someone, that's really spiritual for me. It's easy to be all spiritual when it's convenient, right? What about when life is inconvenient?
Right. Foxhole prayers. Please, God, please do this for me.
Or you have to go out of your way to pick someone up and you really don't feel like it. That's so spiritual. You know?
Yeah.
That's doing God's work right there. Like really just going out of your way. When you'd rather just go to the beach or go to a movie or stay home with whatever, you know, it's just so, it's really, that's being God's secret agent. I love that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So I want to ask you something.
Sure.
If there's anything you could tell your younger self, and you can pick the age,
Okay.
what age would it be, and what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self, don't do drugs. No, I don't know. I would just probably tell my younger self to love yourself, forgive yourself, be kind to yourself, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're so hard on ourselves.
Right. You know, yeah. I'm still really hard on myself, so yeah.
Progress.
Maybe. Yeah, love yourself. Value yourself. It's so important.
It's a question that you wish people would ask more.
Oh yeah, you love that question.
I love that question.
A question I wish people would ask more.
Ask you more.
That's a tough one. Maybe I wish people maybe would ask, how would you change the world if you could? Maybe make it better.
How would you change the world if you could?
Yeah.
Make it better. I'm asking you.
Spread light and love around the world, of course. Be a good person, because there's a lot of negativity, just warring factions and all of that, and religious disputes and all of that, and just unnecessary cruelty.
Yeah.
So, you know, the way we can counteract that is just to be like a beacon of light and love, and just spread as much positivity as we can.
It's a ripple effect.
To fight evil, because there still is evil.
Oh yeah.
And I just need to just bring as much light and love and peace on earth and goodwill to men, right? We need that.
Yeah.
And pet a dog.